Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. On today's episode, we welcome Philip Austin from Niterra, North America. Philip has an impressive background in our industry where he started as an automotive technician, which then parlayed into different roles aimed at educating the industry, which ultimately led him to his position today as manager of technical training at Niterra, North America. Philip is joining me today to talk about ways that we can improve the industry through his eyes, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
We've now had several really good conversations about the industry. What I always enjoy about our conversations is that I think you and I see eye to eye on a lot of different things, and you've had several years of experience and have kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly about our industry. What was it that really led you to want to go to the education side and really be able to educate the aftermarket on how we should be going about our business?
Well, it was an attraction to ensuring that as I continue my path through the industry and sat through several hundreds, probably thousands of training events, and wanted to be a part of helping support tomorrow's technician and those that are staying within the industry. So it was a progression and just the need of helping others and sharing and learning at the same time. So that recipe can only be accomplished by being in the training and educational lane.
Do you remember coming into the industry, maybe some of the challenges that you faced or things that when you think back, maybe should have been easier?
Yes, the first challenge was realizing that engineering was not the path for me. And if my dad was still alive, he'll be probably rocking in his chair and rolling his eyes. But it's just led me into this automotive service diagnostics, service management side of things, and this industry is quite unique and very challenging. And when you have the personality or the aptitude to be people centric and also just troubleshooting and understanding how things work and finding out the most effective way of isolating the problems, it's just like adrenaline. So.
Is that kind of what led you into the industry? Kind of a puzzle type of guy that you like to maybe try to figure out some of these problems and like the critical thinking aspect of it?
Yes, especially the critical thinking aspect of it. And then some things I felt just was naturally evolving with me, with just a logical approach of things. Believe it or not, I wasn't really great with my hands, but I was dangerous enough to, if I took something apart, quite complex, being able to take the time to put it together and take it apart again and then time myself to see how can I, put it back together in a short amount of time. So yeah, it was just that aspect of it that really played a role in driving me in that direction.
You were literally training yourself for the flat rate environment at an early age.
That's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it. Really good way to put it.
What was your first job? What was your first kind of technician job in the real world?
Now, the first job, it's actually my dad is an ex-Jaguar engineer, mechanical engineering, and he actually had a repair shop too towards his retirement. So after school, that's where I basically spent most of my time and learning from his team and how he ran the business and when he sent his employees out for training, and I was involved too. And it was something that I definitely did not want to do, but in our family structure, it was no choice. And then taking that path and then going to school and realizing this is not what I want to do, and then taking the next best choice of, okay, automotive technology, let's dive into that. And then this, I don't want to show my age, but it was the birth of always being heavily involved on a new level and knowing that when you graduated, you had somewhere to start your career path as a dealer tech. So that's where my early beginnings began.
Being that your dad was that successful, was there a period where maybe you felt ashamed of being a technician, or that you didn't feel like you
Absolutely.
were living up to it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reminded all the time, like, you understand the path you're on right now. Right? Yes, I do. I do. I do. And I'm trying to enjoy every minute of it. So,
I think I went through that. I think a lot of people go through that when you say that you're going to school to work on cars, or you are working on cars, that, when you're at that cocktail party and maybe you've got a friend that is a pharmacist, or you've got a friend that is an engineer, right? That maybe went that 4-year route. And when you kind of are in that conversation, maybe at the time you didn't really feel like that was at the same level. I do think that has started to drastically shift, at least in my perception and what I see amongst my friends groups. And being able to see that there's such a need for good skilled technicians, that that message has started to get out, that these people are wildly talented, that they are very, very smart. And while they might not have gone the traditional route of schooling,
mhm.
they still have so much credibility in that conversation. And maybe it turns from, oh, you're a technician, to, oh, hey, I have this car and wondering what I can do to it, or I've had this issue, what do I do to fix it? I think that the narrative is starting to shift. I don't think it's where we want it to be yet, but it is really fun to see that progression over the years.
Absolutely. And we've made so much progress, uh, especially from my days working at the BOE dealerships. And I didn't spend a ton of time dedicated to the technician career path, because it was at a stage where the OE dealerships were looking to develop people, and they were heavily into assessments. and and I was blessed to be one of the candidates to say, hey, listen, are you interested in training to be like a shop foreman and then into service management? But you would not just be taking tech training classes where we'll send you up through the dealer path for only technical training, but it will also be service advising, service management, and understanding that aspect. So that was just like a layup for me, since I had the background, working at my dad's place. And I did not like it. I did not want it, but I had to be his number two from the back end. So it just naturally pulled me in that direction.
Were you a good technician, or would you say that you were a good technician?
I would say I was a good technician. I just was not a fan of the big, dirty jobs, right?
Yeah.
So I was that technician where everything had to be perfect. And like, I look on LinkedIn and Facebook now and watch some of these techs working. I'm like, all right, that's me. Like, the shop does not have to be disgusting. You're pulling out an engine and transmission together. Everything's organized. I was that guy, right? So if it took me an extra 2.5 hours to be clean and organized instead of everything everywhere, I was that type of tech. So I had to make up my dealer time in other ways of troubleshooting and diagnostics, and that's where, because you could not put yourself in one position now, like modern day technicians, and say, I just want to do drivability. Hey, if a transmission came through, you had to rebuild it if you're a tech, right? And if a head job came through, you had to do that too, and then just hope for more drivability. So that's where I graduated more towards that, because it was so much more cleaner and I could use my head more than my hands.
I think that is one of the really cool parts about our industry as it evolves. And regardless of what your feeling is on technology and the advancements that are coming with current day vehicles, but I think what that does is opens up different segments within being a technician, right? It's, I always kind of go back to what my dad continues to say, that he feels like there's still mechanics and there's still technicians, and that there's a difference, and they're both very, very sorely needed. And I don't know that it's very often that you get the two to intertwine, but when you do, you've got a really, really fantastic technician in the shop. And I think the more you see that, and the more our industry might appeal to that person that doesn't want to get dirty, as well as the person that loves getting dirty. I think there's a spot for everybody now. And I don't know that that was always the case, but it does feel more and more that we're moving that direction, more specialization, more, I guess, working on things that fit your skill set, because I was probably more along the lines that you are and wasn't all that excited about doing an engine swap, right? It was more of some of the other stuff. But I do think that is something that could be a huge advantage to us moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Because as we're going towards the trend of more guys that are specializing in things, it causes a domino effect. More so, not domino effect. Let me take that back. It's a wrinkle effect because it redefines what a master technician is. Because a master technician taking a test on engine repair or suspension or transmission systems versus a master tech that actually done multiple jobs and taking the tests that was written quite differently years ago is night and day. So it forces the industry to have some really serious conversations, which leads to me being blessed in the position I'm in now, where a lot of the course curriculum we start to develop, I try to add that sense of the repair aspect. Yeah, you could be the best troubleshooter in the world. A, the job has to be authorized off of your recommendations, and B, the repair has to be made, right? And the verification afterward. So how is your shop organized? Does it get handed off to a guy that's more, good with his hands of doing the repairs, or does that same technician follow through in the next task or duty of his job and actually do that repair? Great, I could use a pressure transducer to see whether I have a bad head gasket or something like that. But now you have to do the head gasket, right? So being able to have that type of technician today, I think, is quite different than before, and that's what is challenging to the industry.
I also think it's such a fluid process from service management, because your process and the way you get work through a shop can change based on the talent level in your shop. If you've got multiple people that can do multiple different things, or you have more generalists that can do kind of a little bit of everything, I do think it really changes how you manage your shop. And I know in a lot of cases, I think our industry tries to put a box around every shop and say, you should manage it this way. But in reality, your workflow might be dependent on the skill level of the technicians that are actually in the shop.
Yes, absolutely. And every shop is different. And to your point, the workflow has to be set on a foundation that can incorporate however you have your team built. So if you have a team of generalists, dietechnicians, and then just undercar guys, all right, great, okay. But the percentages of all of them have to be suited for your shop so that you could actually make money. That's why I'm not a big fan of average repair order number. Every shop is different. I don't think we're in an industry where we could live and die off of average repair order costs, because I know with the shops that I was affiliated with, I could get 3 engine swaps within 1 month, and then I could get heavy undercar for another, and then I could get drivability for like 3-4 months. And trust me, the average repair orders of all those aspects are night and day, right? So when we develop tactical training and service management training, we come from that approach. Well, let's talk realistically, right? If I have a dietechnician that's is supposed to be troubleshooting within a certain amount of hours, right? I want those to be translated into billable hours, right? And it's a really big challenge for a shop to really fall into their mix where they could be productive and make money as well.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Wrench. We'd like to take a minute to talk about this week's sponsor, RepairPal. Growing a repair business is a big challenge. Consumers want an easy, high quality car repair experience, but might not know how to find you and might not trust you. Gain these customers by becoming RepairPal certified. RepairPal will introduce you to new customers through repairpal.com, the largest site for auto repair, and through the recommendations of their partners like USAA, CarMax, and Consumer Reports. They also help you with customer retention by providing an independent third-party quality and satisfaction certification and proof of fair prices with their best-in-class estimator. Millions of consumers each month visit repairpal.com in need of mid to major mechanical repairs, and the average RepairPal customer spends $800 to $1,000 at their shop visits. Get new customers. Head on over to repairpal.com/shops and schedule a chat to learn more. When you sign up, you'll get 1 month of free service. That's repairpal.com/shops. I want to spend a moment about learning more about you as we go into that. And I kind of dove ahead a little bit just because I always do get really excited in talking to you because we do get into the weeds with a lot of this stuff. And I love that. But talk to me a little bit about your current role, about Niterra North America. I know, one of the things that kind of surprised me as we started to talk was Niterra, just getting general familiarity with it, is formerly NGK Spark Plugs North America, correct?
Yes. Now, Niterra as a organization is international. Okay. I represent the North American division, the mobility division, and the Niterra name was decided on because of the various companies and investments that we as a company are starting to make outside of the automotive sector. So that has redefined the automotive sector that we're in, which is called now the mobility division. Yeah. So all the other companies that are under the Niterra umbrella is very diverse, multiple industries. So it only made sense because, as you know, from a business sense, the NGK Spark Plugs boxes you in. So with our future and our current and our future path, it only made sense.
That does make more sense now. And that's something that I've learned more and more. Obviously, growing up in the industry, you always heard about NGK and we're always very familiar with it. And I think it's interesting to learn about the evolution of companies and why something happened or where, kind of how it evolved. And it was very interesting to learn more about that. Now, from your perspective, and maybe learning a little bit more about you as a person, you took that turn from technician into different roles. And I kind of followed a similar path, right? Started off my career in a shop and then went different directions. That education side is so important to us right now. And I want to ask you a little bit about your exact role at Niterra, because what is it that you do there that is really bringing that education and bringing that understanding to our industry to put us in a better place?
I appreciate the question because my role is starting to evolve a bit, and just to stay pretty dynamic with how the industry is going. But I'm the manager of technical training, and it does incorporate a piece of it of developing, because whether I'm tasked to develop strategic programs and roadmaps of how we can develop our people internally that is in the automotive sector, whether it's from the sales product, and being blessed to have a front row seat and spend time with repair shops and technicians. And so bridging off of my background and making sure that all pieces meet together, because as a manager of technical training, there's an internal piece of making sure the other business units that support the same customer and business segment, there's a level of cross training that should be done to make us all better and more focused on what we need to do in supporting the customer. We are a manufacturer of several high tech engine management categories on an OES side and also in the aftermarket. So it only makes sense that the support of those that install it on the commercial side, we have to have a strong presence in educating them. So my role involves all of that internally and externally, and finding new ways for how we could make a greater impact more effectively, and in turn understand the science behind it of building loyalty. Because if they see the same brand names of NGK being the ignition specialist or NTK brand being a sensor specialist, by providing a genuine part that fixed the car right the first time after your diagnosis is correct, of course, to educating them on the new systems that's coming through that would incorporate a new style of technology on the ignition side or the sensor side. So that pretty much in a nutshell covers what I try to manage and do.
And now, are you primarily working with the aftermarket then?
Yes.
How is that different than you were raised on the dealer side as a technician and then working with the aftermarket? There's obviously differences, but there's also a lot of similarities. What do you see as differences? And you can go any way you want with this. If it's challenges, if it's something more along the lines of, I don't even know how to ask that question. It's just trying to identify the differences between independent and the dealer. From my perspective, we need to get everybody working together a little bit more to get our industry into a better place. But at the same time, there are those differences that might be barriers to allow us to do that.
Yes, there are differences. And the aftermarket side is so much harder. It's so much harder. So it's a different type of challenge, because on the OE side, you do have your list of challenges. And even talking with the OE engineering team and the development team and the quality assurance team, I still have that foot on the OE side working for this company, which really brings me joy, because it reminds me of my OE past as a technician, and sharing my experiences and sharing the thought processes and the diagnostic approach to several of the systems of the components that we manufacture. So the challenges are quite different on the aftermarket side, and I'll leave it at that.
It is a little bit more, I think, a lot of times, because you are just working on a bunch of different stuff, right? And I think that can be a challenge in itself, that you are seeing so many different things. It's not the commonality that you'd have working for an OE, where you do have that familiarity, you do understand those systems inside and out. And I've seen when a dealer technician comes to work for an independent shop, it's a little bit of a learning curve, because it's not quite the same. But I think the ones that have it in their personality to really think through a problem can really succeed on the independent side too. So I see kind of some variables there that, obviously all of these folks are technicians, but there is a difference once they're in the shop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add a little bit more to that. And when I have an opportunity to go out and do training myself, not just managing the department, but one of the things I always start off with to capture the attention of the technicians or the audience, I always say, you are as good as the last car you just fixed. And if you think like that, it keeps you humble, but still challenged, right? Because I've seen, and I would include myself in this, I've seen a BMW Master Tech get humbled by a Ford. I've seen a Ford Master Tech get humbled by a Volvo. So we have to really stay humbled and grounded. And that transition that you touched on was a transition that I went through, from being an OE tech and mastering key lines to being humbled by other lines. And then it forced me to find the common denominator of different aspects of the approach and what you do. So it's from the service side. How can I find a general diagnostic approach and approach this of pulling information, what I need, wiring diagrams, understanding the system, and then approach it, right?
Yeah. That's
So,
solid advice.
yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the different types of training that you're putting together, that you deliver, that you're actually doing the training with.
Mm. Yeah. So, uh, our training program is going through an evolution, and where we don't have a ton of personnel out there. So we lean on subject matter specialists to be incorporated within our training program, which requires a few things, right? Well, I love working with mobile techs,
Hmm.
mobile dietitians. They are masters at what they do, and they're very flexible in that learning path for them to constantly stay on point. So we incorporate a lot of their feedback and their case studies and try to align with some of the year make and model applications that they run into and see if we could find similar patterns. But the content development is one of the key recipes that is dependent on real world case studies and scenarios. Those that we were able to find here at the NGK Technical Training Center in Wixom here, or through the pathways of dealing with mobile technicians as well. So our programs or our topics is really top heavy of that type of feedback content as we develop them. And one last piece of that, we our in-person training classes that is done in the evening, we make sure we cap it at 3 hours. We do not believe in 4 hour evening training classes, and it's just based off of the research and past experience of you could have a great class, but it's only as good as what the attendee could retain. And the last time I checked, half of us dropped out of engineering school in like the third or fourth year because we couldn't sit in the chair long enough or read through 80 pages and write a paper, right? So, with that same understanding and respect for that, we are working on vehicles 8 hours a day. And after that third hour, that retention level drops dramatically. So I could be delivering the best pieces of information, but the segment that is hit that last hour is not retained as much as before. So we would like to keep it within that sweet spot, so to speak, of that 3 hour period of training and challenge ourselves of only providing content that's going to be penetrable within that 3 hours and challenge the audience to really find ways of how they could adapt it into their processes and procedures.
Do you think there's an opportunity ever to get independent training that's similar to factory training in the sense that you do it during the day? And I don't see it very often on the independent side, but similar to what you're saying, anybody that's sat through a class after a full day of working at a shop, and a lot of times you have to travel to get to that training a fair amount, you're exhausted and then expected to come in the very next day at the start of work, and it's a lot. And in my experience on the OE side, it was more you go to a 4 day training class in person, and your focus for that week is the training. And I almost feel like we miss out on an opportunity on the independent side because of that we don't have that training available to us to be able to have that person go fully focus on it for a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you because that was the biggest challenge for me coming into the aftermarket side. Even though as a dealer tech, I sat through several evening training classes, and one of my
Sure.
punchlines to the guys at break time was like, "I don't know how you do this." I want you to do this. And we would, as we got to know each other, we joke about it, but I was serious. Like, I'm a dealer tech. I go to training during the day.
Right.
You know, I pick up my coffee or tea on the way. We get there at 8, start at 9. We train, have an hour lunch. We finish training by 5. And if it's a 2-day, we'll do the same thing. Evening training was like unheard of. So I believe that the industry is going to come to a saturation point.
Yeah.
And where, as you're seeing more organizations, that I applaud them with the training from Friday and Saturday and half day Sunday, they're starting to help with that transition and dedicated time of all day training where it's not coming after work. But I think we have a long way to go.
Doesn't it feel like that's one of those things that we just do it that way just because we've always done it that way, and we are just going to continue to do it that way? And for me, it doesn't make sense. There's such an opportunity there. And I get that independent shop that's out there, and say you have 4 technicians in your shop and you lose that technician for a week to training, that it has a big impact on your revenue. It has a big impact on your profitability, and it's very challenging to make that happen. But with the advancements in technology, I don't know that we can live without it. Like we have to adapt at some point.
Yeah, we definitely do, and just for our audience as well, we have to realize that we're not the only industry that is very sensitive to that. The training and development, and that's why I love this chapter of my life, where it becomes I'm having an opportunity to learn more about the science behind it and understanding people and the psychology behind it. There's a lot of other industries where, and even on the retail side and part side of the business, it's like labor hours and time. I pay you to do this. Training is not included. So it's something that we have to just deal with together. And just putting my business owner hat on, it's very difficult to lose a tech for a day. The numbers are calculating in my head, but we have to start classifying it and in ways of which, hey, when that technician has to go on vacation, right? We have to compensate. So I think as an industry together, we need to have more roundtables on it, and let's bring some experts along the lines and project management and business management to figure out what are the soft points that we could attack versus the hard points, and come together and start a road in just really testing the day training and see how it goes and how you can make up for that. But at this point, it's a serious discussion. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I'm staying hopeful.
Well, maybe we take some baby steps into it, though, right? Maybe we can, instead of doing that night class, maybe we do just 1 day class. Like it's just a 1 day class. Maybe it doesn't have to be to the extent of the 4-day classes, or maybe start with a 1 or 2 day class on diagnostics and see what you can come up with. I think there are baby steps that we can take to get to where we need to be. Mm-hmm. But it takes kind of somebody being the leader and getting out there to do it, because to me, that's just low hanging fruit in terms of being able to get our people trained adequately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And to your point, and just to summarize the points that we're trying to make here, so that this could allow our audiences to participate in the steps, because we're going to have to do this together. It's not just saying, hey, we have to send our technicians or our staff out during the day so that they could be trained better, but what other pieces can we incorporate to support it, right, and to make that happen? So I'm definitely open to be a part of those conversations, and I think the more we have these training expos and roundtables and put some great minds together and see how we could pursue that, because it's all about retainment, right? We want to have training in which our employees can retain the information. And even in training, obviously, it has a very high value and impact. But if we could find ways to do more by doing some day training, great. But we have a long way.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Did you know that WrenchWay offers free solutions to help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors connect with local shops and dealerships? Nearly 700 schools across the country have used WrenchWay to successfully get resources and support for their classrooms, such as tool and equipment donations, advisory committee members, shop tours and guest speakers, and much, much more. It's an easy way to bring education and industry together to promote and improve careers in automotive and diesel. There's no obligation, hidden costs, or fees. WrenchWay will always be free for instructors to use. Visit wrenchway.com and click on the For Schools link under Solutions to learn more and sign up. Direct link is in the show notes. You talked about psychology there, and I don't know that psychology is something that's brought up a whole lot in our industry, but when you look at the brain of a technician and how you see the best ones work, talk to me about that a little bit. What is, we had talked in our pre-show meeting about this, but the psychology of diagnostics and being able to understand what makes a great tech, right? Talk to me a little bit about that. What is it that you see in the best, and really how that psychology has an impact on that?
Yeah, first I like to say and acknowledge that if you're a technician in the industry, I tip my hat to you, because for you to have that psychological toughness just to work in this business, between the interruptions of the service advisor and asking whether the job is completed, what did you find, and explaining that, then going to the next car and troubleshooting, and if you had a fight with your girlfriend last night, it's a lot, So if you're able to do this and stay in the business for more than 5 years, I applaud you. So with that being said, training these individuals to stay in the business and have a logical approach only makes it easier. One of the greats that is my mentor for many years and is John Thornton. He's one of the premier logical troubleshooters of this industry. And I followed him for 25 years. And I don't want to show my age, but one of the things that I liked about his training approach that I adopted into mine and tried to find ways of enhancing it is that he always helped the attendee see the logical aspect of it and let everything else fall into place. Understand the system operation, the logical aspect of it, and then let everything else fall in place with the proper testing and resources to look up what's necessary for you to look up and know is a key. And then applying a logical approach from the start to the end. So those technicians that are able to adapt and be more logical in their approaches are the ones that are going to be sustaining our business.
I think they understand it better. And I think that's where the best educators come into play, right? Is that they are able to take something that is sophisticated and break it down into logical steps and really help somebody visualize and understand how a system works. Because if you don't do that, and I look back to my training coming up in the industry, and there were some teachers that I just was able to learn from better than others. And maybe it's the way that they spoke or whatever, but there were some teachers where I went to tech school that had legendary reputations. They had a really great way of breaking down the sophisticated into being, really easy to understand. And they had a lot of huge fans that were students because of it. And really people that wanted to take that class, that wanted to get in there and learn about electrical theory because of how it was taught. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of how we educate technicians and maybe the communication level from the teacher standpoint of how they get that information across, because it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. And what I love that I'm seeing a lot more of is hands-on.
Yeah.
Hands-on is definitely the way to go, but you have to have the right timing and environment and the event to really pull it off. So when you don't have the hands-on ability, which really, really helps the student or the attendee, how you deliver information and how you place it in a practical way is the key. So it is challenging, and those that are able to have a nice balance between helping the students understand how the system is supposed to work with the variables of how the system will work when it doesn't, or face conditions that would cause the system to react in different ways. And for an example, it's like when we talk about fuel trimming and the birth of air fuel ratio sensors, and shifting our normal mindset of how we troubleshoot based off of fuel trims and those type of data PIDs, and then how we look at a newer technology like an air fuel ratio sensor and have to depend more on Lambda. It's a big shift of how a technician's approach is just on those two systems alone, and how it's taught. You have to be pretty surgical about it, because it could cause a misdiagnosis very easily. And the reason why I bring that subject up is because we have to kind of fight with the technical piece of the technology of those two components. And sometimes we can get caught up in the theoretical engineering aspect of it, and we lose the troubleshooting aspects of it, because we have to challenge ourselves as instructors to say, what will help me fix the car? If there's not a data PID on it, why am I talking about it? Or if I can't scope it, right? Why are we talking about it? Let's find something else to talk about, and then plug in along the way to help that student reach the point of a proper diagnosis, repair it, and verify it. So that's the exciting part of educating, right? And to your point, there's different students that learn a different way, and we have to constantly challenge ourselves to see how we can draw as many students towards the path of translating what we're teaching them into fixable steps on the vehicle.
So those of our podcast listeners that listen consistently know that I do not mind throwing myself under the bus as a bad technician and a very dumb technician when I first started out. And one of the things that always tripped me up, and this I think goes along the lines of electrical diagnostics, in that a lot of times you can get lost in the weeds with all the complexities that come along with diagnostics. But one of the things that was weirdly tripping me up as an entry-level technician was some of the really, really simple stuff, which was, where do I find that connector? How do I take that connector apart to even get to the wire to test it? All of those simple things that I think experienced technicians and even educators take for granted, is that maybe that student doesn't know how to take apart a wiring harness very well, right? Or doesn't know how to put it back together in a professional way that makes it look clean and presentable. And I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on that side, because, we always jump to talking about, a DVOM, or talking about a scope, or talking about whatever diagnostic tool it might be. But there's some really easy things as an entry-level technician that I would like to see these young technicians really have a good grasp on, because I think some of that little stuff really trips up young technicians. At least it did for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just with some educators that teach in a technical college, actually technical colleges in Illinois. And it was just so remarkable talking with them, because they're sharing with me the type of students that are coming through. And sometimes they have to take a step back and say, I have to go back and teach them even how to operate a ratchet, right?
Yeah.
And then it gave birth to a conversation of, hey, what does the engine class in the curriculum looks like today? Are you using in-cylinder pressure transducers as you're showing them, the 4-stroke cycle? And then what are your visual aids? And a couple of them was actually said, we don't do that. And that's a pretty interesting concept. And I was like, yeah, that just rolled off of my head, because I'm assuming from when I learned it, where we were thinking about in-cylinder pressure transducers and looking at the waveform and then tied it into the mechanical aspect, right? So They too are thirsty and open for suggestions to enhance their curriculums to help with the retention of learning, because as they're starting with the basics, is taking advantage of every step and opportunity in the course of study to be as practical as you can, but make sure it applies to modern day testing.
I feel sorry for a lot of the tech schools, to be honest with you. The amount of curriculum they're trying to cram into 2 years. And I think all of us have either been a part of advisory committee meetings, or you sit in on them, and you're really going through and looking at the credit hours given for each class. And some of them are starting to get pushed out. And especially as we're introducing more of the EV type of stuff and just advanced technology in general, ADAS systems, they have so much they have to try and cram into 2 years that it is nearly impossible. And as we talk about continuing education, I think that's where the value really comes into play, is that extension of their technical training, maybe at a trade school. But man, I feel sorry for tech schools and trying to understand what it is that they have to cram into that 2 years, because it is a lot.
Yes, and I applaud the educators, the professors, and the associate instructors that are all part of that process. They are taking on the challenge. I try to incorporate our yearly schedule to visit. Like I mentioned, in Illinois, I spent a week in Illinois visiting some tech schools and some community colleges on this. So they have their challenges set before them. And between their love for what they're doing and the students that love to work on cars, I think it's a win-win, and we're going to be okay with that. But the challenges are there for them. And, that's one thing of our organization we're trying to support too.
I love the fact that you're doing that. I also love the fact that you talked about the importance of visual training, right? And having visuals built up. And I know for instructors that are out there, both at the high school and post-secondary level, those can be really hard to come by. Those visual, visual trainers, right? Because trainers can be extremely expensive. And a lot of times there'll be teachers that try to build them themselves, but maybe don't have the parts that are needed to put together a trainer, or at some levels, the knowledge base needed to put together a trainer. They are so impactful. I really look at that, and I see the best programs that have these incredible training modules or visual trainers. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Do you have any ideas for how we make that part easier? How we get more visual training into these schools, and maybe some of the underrepresented or the under budgeted schools, the ability to get some of this and some of these resources? Because I do think it's really, really important.
Yeah, it's very important. And the good news is it is happening. And with my trip last week, it was very encouraging where I see it's happening. It's not happening enough, but it's happening. So it's twofold. For one, I'm seeing the move away from these visual trainers and just having the OE send the car, right? And donate that car. They take it apart. They analyze the systems. They put it back together. They have the OE factory tool to work through the processes, especially when putting it back together and reprogramming the computers or recalibrating certain systems and watching them all network together. So with it being twofold of actually just transitioning from the actual trainers, those units that you have, which are great, but getting the entire vehicle. The more and more manufacturers are donating vehicles and the OE level scan tools to go with them. The second fold is the co-op systems of putting them into the service bay, whether that's on the OE, and we actually need more in the aftermarket side.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's too top heavy on the OE dealers, and the shortages is spread evenly on both sides, the OE service bay and the aftermarket service bay. So if that could get closer to 50-50, it would be great. So the co-op systems have to take the experience of working on those vehicles and put it in a real world environment, and a co-op system working in the shop. So the more we could gravitate towards that, the better we will be.
It's funny you mentioned the donation of car. I just looked out on Shop Talk out on our website, and Greenville Technical College just received a donation from General Motors for their ASEP program of a 2023 GMC Canyon. That's awesome. Like a donation of that. I saw that come across yesterday, and it just made my day. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and that's great, and it gives that the opportunity to have the entire vehicle, not a trainer or a half vehicle, and simulate some practical experiences. So that I'm all for that, and I see us going in the right direction with that.
I do too, and it's fun to see that. Obviously our industry isn't perfect, but I think what's become really cool is the amount of people having conversations about maybe our shortcomings and how we make it better. And I think, we've talked a lot, whether it's podcast guests or just general conversations that I have within industry, but we do have a lot of proud people in this industry and people that have really created an awesome life for themselves because of this industry. And I think that's why we all speak with so much passion about it, is because of that. Like it does have just an abundance of opportunity if somebody's willing to get their foot in the door and work hard and get themselves into a position that allows their skills to be used in a way that creates a good life for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to make another note too, that there's a really challenging bridge that we all have to cross together. When I'm able to attend technical training events or even conduct them myself, one thing I'm pretty awestruck about is when the audience is asked, by simply raising your hand, out of 50 people, how many of you use oscilloscopes or well versed? Half the class, or maybe a third, right? And it makes me think of, we have a great array of trainers out there and training programs. Are we reaching everyone we need to reach, right? We have an abundance of ATECs that are dedicated to training, and it's great. My concern is what's happening to that average B guy. Do we have some sort of mentoring system? Is they being tagged along to come to training? And then is the training fitting for them to help them through that bridge? Because I know for me as a technician, it was a bridge to go from just doing basic services and then understanding how to PMI a new car, and then now troubleshooting the systems when it starts to default, right? So I think the industry, especially the training part of the industry, we don't want to leave no one behind, right? We have these students that are coming out of tech schools, going through the C-Tech process, then getting into a general repair technician level, B-Tech, taking their ANSI certifications, everything like that. But that bridge from B to A, not only do I challenge my organization, but I also challenge the other organizations too to come together, and let's start concentrating on them too. And there will always be a place for advanced training and taking those that are on the top level to the next level, or sustainability, staying relevant as a really good ATEC, but also incorporating the next generation or the BTEC group that's looking to reach that ATEC status. So
that is one heck of a point, Philip. And the reason I say that is because I'm guilty of that. In my experience of running shops, I definitely would pick on the best technicians, continue to feed them training, and maybe starve some of the other technicians that were really good at their role, at their job. But I wasn't trying to uplift them to the next level because they were so good. They were almost punished for being such a good undercar tech, or, something along those lines. Yeah. And granted, not everybody wants to be a wizard with electrical diagnostics or any type of diagnostics, but man, you're absolutely right. As soon as you said that, kind of the light bulb went off with me. I'm like, I was guilty of that. I was the one that was not doing a good job at that.
Yeah. So the more we come together on that, I think we'll be so much more stronger. As I put in a lot of my social media posts, hashtag we're stronger together, right? And everyone reached a point where they did not know. And we're in the industry of either you know or you don't. The gray area is, and now I'm putting on my mobile technician hat when I did that for a little bit of years, where I programmed a lot of computers that they thought was supposed to fix the car. And they had to backtrack and then find the root cause and then fix the car. Yeah, they were still charged for us coming in and reprogramming the computer, but now you still have to figure out what's going on with the root cause. So that gap of educating shops and technicians, of finding the root cause and coming together to know where the pain points are and training them, it's a win-win for everyone.
How do you balance that part, right? Because I feel like this is one of the downfalls in our industry, is that there is in a lot of cases, a huge expectation on a entry level technician to come in and produce right off the bat. And at some ways, and I don't want to point a finger at the OE business because it's not fair, but the way that warranty has been built, a warranty program, from a technician's point of view, it's easier to throw parts at a car because you're going to get paid for those parts and you can write a story to get paid for those parts. Whereas if you spend 3 or 4 hours diagnosing it properly, then you don't get compensated for it. And I think that's one of the downfalls of our industry, quite frankly, is that we've made it easier to throw parts at vehicles and get paid for it than we have just to fix it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something that we have to come together on. And just for this podcast or session, I just want to plant the seed in a repair shop, especially on the national chains. They have like a buddy system, or especially when tightening down the wheels, torquing down the wheels, get someone to sign off on it. We need to start introducing more mentorship level or buddy system levels to take away from the downtime. Because if you have that sharp tech and he came to the conclusion of what was going on with the car, that's the time where you set the seeds and pull a tech over for 10 minutes to say, hey, this is how I walked through the problem. See how that car came in? This is what I found. This was the before and this is the after. And if we start to have more of those seed-like conversations within the shop, and then when they go to training, they could be more prepared to receive more information for them to absorb the information better, I think that's a start.
I do too. Such solid points.
Yeah.
One thing you talked about was the fact that you were a mobile technician, that you still work with a lot of mobile technicians. I see that part of our sector, that part of our industry growing and growing. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as a viable kind of source to grow our service departments, to extend our reach? And as a technician, how did you like that mobile side?
I have to think about my answer because I have a lot of friends in the mobile side of business, and I was a business owner myself. So you don't want to have too many jobs go out subletted for the mobile tech to capture. Okay. However, there is a place for it. And in our business, we have to kind of keep it within its place, right? So the shop ideally will want to rely on the mobile techs, and as they go through their growth of their team and their business, and that mobile tech plays a very instrumental role in that, and fill in the blanks until their team is ready. And as they become ready, have that mobile tech be more of a mentor when he comes through, and spend that time. Trust me, they will come, right? But it is a balancing act. As a business owner, you want to develop some sort of talent in your organization where you minimize the calls to a mobile tech, right? So it is necessary, and it's up to the organization to balance that out well. But I encourage shop owners to utilize mobile techs for sessions. Pay the guy an extra hour to stay back and troubleshoot something where it's not a headache, but it's just coaching 2 or 3 techs that are watching him check what's going on with the car, right? So those are ways where we could kind of grow together. And that's how I would answer that.
And when you say it's on everybody, right? I think the technician can't be excluded from that. If you want to be a good technician, you have to put the time in. And I know so many shops across the country that they look so positively on that. If that technician stays after work one night, and maybe it's one night a month, maybe it's one night a week, whatever it is, and hooks a scope up and is playing around with it and trying to figure it out on off times. And I think we put so much of it on the shops to provide this training and to really be the catalyst for that further education. But I'm a big believer in that. If in any business you want to get ahead, you're going to have to work harder than others, and you're going to have to really put in the work and be a professional. And the best ones that I've seen, we've talked about Tanner Brandt in the past. Like Tanner, it's his craft, right? That's what he does. And he spends a lot of time on training, and he spends a lot of time really wrapping his head around different things, but he's one of the best of the best. And I think that's something I see consistently amongst the best, is looking for that training, looking for ways to better themselves. And to me, I think we can't go without saying that, right? They are part of the solution here as well.
Yes, absolutely. And if we all work together and find our role to play in that, and as long as it's fluid throughout what we are working with, who we're working with, and how we're working with them, that's a great start.
Well, I tell you what, Philip, I've really enjoyed our conversation. It probably went some different ways than I even thought it would, but I think that's how our conversations typically go. I'm such a fan of yours and what you're doing for the industry, and think when you come across somebody whose heart is in the right place for the right reason, I think the world of that type of person. And that's you in a nutshell, right? You have a heart for this industry. You want to see the industry get to a better place. And I really, really applaud what you and Niterra North America are doing to really make it a better place. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me too. And one last thing I'll add is that we are starting to embrace a community that we call Shop Squad community, and we just open up the door through our NGK and NTK brands for those that want to share information, see where we're going to be next with our training, and how we could support them better by receiving their feedback. So thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to continue the conversation and support.
Industry, look up Shop Squad. I was actually playing around with the webpage while we're talking here, because it is pretty cool. So awesome resource. Thank you for mentioning that. We'll put a link to that in the show notes so that people can get to it. Philip, where do they find you at? I know you're active on LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm very active on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page called Shop Squad as well, and anyone could come aboard and exchange some back and forth together, and I could be found on social media through those two avenues, or just through shopsquadonline.com. I'm available.
Thanks again, Philip.
Okay. Thank you. You take care.
You too.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.